Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And today I rise to discuss the recommendations provided to the State Government in the Independent Bushfire Review 2019-20. And I'd like to begin by congratulating Mr Keelty AO and the SA Bushfire Review team for their immense effort conducting the consultation and developing this important piece of work in a very tight timeframe, especially during the COVID pandemic of the last couple of months. And indeed, I was pleased to hear that the State Government will commit $20.3 million towards several initiatives outlined in that review, and that $16.7 million in federal and state funds are to be invested over 5 years into the South Australian Disaster Risk Reduction Grants program. Deputy Speaker, as you know, bushfires are of immediate concern to all of us across South Australia, but especially to residents in my electorate, many who are situated in peri-urban, high bushfire risk zones across the Mitcham Hills and Mount Lofty ranges. I would again, as I always do, like to thank the amazing work of the Sturt CFS group and the brigades that make up that group, including Eden Hills, Cherry Gardens, Coromandel Valley, Blackwood and Belair CFS, for their efforts over the 2019-20 bushfire season, as well as, of course, the Sturt SCS volunteers too, whose home is at Coromandel Valley. These groups protect life and limb in my community, as well as so many important open spaces such as Belair National Park, Sturt Gorge and Shepherds Hill Recreation Park. Deputy Speaker, you know that I regularly meet and converse with the hard-working and dedicated volunteers in my electorate to understand their concerns from a frontline perspective. And in April, I was very pleased to be able to submit a review or a submission to the Keelty Review on behalf of my community to reflect the information that I gathered in correspondence with them in the preceding weeks before that. And indeed, I was delighted to see the review make appropriate and relevant recommendations will help the determined and dedicated volunteers in their line of duty. And some specific recommendations that were really pleasing in the report, including equipping CFS trucks with automatic vehicle location systems. And I know this is something that the crew at the Eden Hills station have raised with me on many times. Additional funding for volunteer training and improved land management and fuel reduction practices. And we know this was a huge part of the review and is a really big issue in my community, is about the fuel load that sits on the floor of places like Belair National Park, but along the arterial roads in and out of my electorate as well. I'd also like to draw attention to other areas I believe worthy of exploring further as part of the review, and that includes increasing the number of paid CFS staff, upgrading country fire stations, and developing a fleet of reserve volunteers for busy times with more flexible leave arrangements for volunteers. I think one of the big issues across the fire season that we saw in Australia was that volunteers from my community, for example, were fighting fires directly in our community, such as Cully Creek. They were down on York Peninsula, and then, of course, teams were going over to New South Wales as well. And there was a period over Christmas where there were volunteers from my community who missed Christmas, missed spending time with family and friends, had exhausted all their annual leave and were still out there volunteering, fighting fires. And in extreme situations like we have seen this bushfire season, I think we need to have a structure that rewards is not the right word, that looks after those volunteers and the employers who support them as well. Deputy Speaker, the CFS is powered by over 13,500 volunteers in 425 brigades. These brave men and women employ a vast array of equipment and expertise to ensure all of our communities we represent stay safe. It is apparent from both my consultation and from reading the review that the relationship between the volunteers, salaried staff and the agencies themselves was clearly central to the operational success and at times challenges of the disastrous fires that occurred over 2019-20. During the Cully Creek fire in the Adelaide Hills, the Search CFS Brigade provided 8 full rotations of strike teams, which translated to 272 personnel, 5 appliances, 1 bulk water carrier and command vehicles. The group also sent 84 personnel to Kangaroo Island, 3 appliances and a specialist compressed air foam system. And once again, I'd like to commend the entire Sturt CFS group for their bravery, selflessness and sacrifice. Their tireless work has saved countless lives, animals and bushland. And I note the review outlines the Keelty Review outlines the psychological impacts of the bushfire season and level of psychological stress on the services. The review outlines the need for adequate mental health support for firefighters and bushfire-affected communities. These volunteers, as I said, work day and night in times of disaster, and we depend on them in so many ways. It's only fair that the right level of support is available to them and I would urge SAFECOM to increase resources to the Stress Prevention and Management Service to ensure it can provide support when needed.
The question before the House is that the House